All right, hello. This is True Crypto 28, Mr. Anderson. Quick video here. Well, let's see how quick it is. I don't really know, but I got a lot of requests to look into the new additions to True Vibration 2.0. And the biggest changes, we made some changes to kind of clean things up in the natural appearance. And for those that don't know, True Vibration is an indicator that I designed specifically around my trading style, right? So I'm trying to find a way for the algorithm to mimic the things that I'm looking for, the things that I'm interested in, and to help people. What the biggest thing that I've seen is it's helped people learn as well, which is great, right? But I designed it for active traders, so someone that's an active trader, someone that has some trading jobs of their own, is going to obviously perform better, right? Because there is no money tree when it comes to trading. You know, you have to have the skill set, and the most important element is always going to be you, right? So this is a tool, and of course, a professional has the ability to use a tool a little bit better than an amateur, but this can help people go down that road. And like I said, it has helped people to learn a little bit more and understanding vibration, understanding flow, understanding how markets move, etc. With that said, the way that True Vibration was already set up worked perfectly fine, but it had some rules, and the rules were related to market structure. And the number one issue that I've seen that people would end up doing is they put themselves into a position where they just simply weren't either trading according to the rules that's set by True Vibration, which is your choice. You can trade however you like. But my point is, if you're trying to utilize the system within True Vibration, then of course you want to follow those rules. And one of the benefits, one of the ways I believe I was able to improve upon that was to go ahead and put in something that I've used for many years for directional bias, and that is the directional bias indicator up here, right? So how does this work, just so that everyone has an understanding? I'll go to a daily scale. I'm going to give a brief overview, but I'm going to spend most of the time just kind of going through some examples more than anything else. And of course, there's an instructional video of how to use it, but let's just look at what some of those changes are. So basically, the first thing I would say is you can come in here to True Vibration, which normally looks like this. So when you bring it up, it's going to look like this. But what you're looking at up here is also True Vibration. Well, what do you mean? Well, if I come up here, and it's going to take a little time because I got a few hundred windows open, but you'll notice now that this now absolutely reflects this because that's what it is. But by coming over here and turning this on, I have the ability to turn on a totally different indicator, which is called Directional Bias Indicator, DBI for short. Very simple. And the benefit of the DBI is that it's designed specifically, right? And it's time frame specific. Right now I have the daily time frame, which is what we'll talk about here in the beginning of this video. But it is designed to take away half the playing field for most people, right? Meaning if you're utilizing this system of the directional bias, what it means is when you see green, not while it stays green, just when it turns green. When it turns green, let's go ahead and mark that off right there, right? You would, in this situation, remain looking for green until it turns to red, right? So until it turns red, which happens there. We'll go ahead and try to change that color real quick. And we'll play with the red in a little bit. But the idea is this. What am I saying? I'm saying that if you were utilizing this tool, you would have been looking for longs only during this entire period. Now, I've explained this to some of my guys already. Some might just naturally come in and say, oh, whatever you're going to show me, of course, it's going to work pretty well because you're looking at this tremendously bullish time frame. To which I would explain to them and say, exactly, because that's the point, right? The point is we don't know here. You didn't know at this point that this was going to be this tremendously bullish time frame. It ended up that way, but yet this indicator would have had you only looking for longs during that time frame. Okay, so let me show you a couple different things, because another part is this. In trading, our goal is not to buy the bottom, sell the top. That's unreasonable. You want to get as much of the chunk of the middle that you can, if that's 50% of the trend, if that's 70% of the trend, etc. But then most importantly, you just want to trade within the trend, right? I want to be looking for the path of least resistance. If things are uptrending, so be it. But there's obviously a lot of various ways to look at trend. I believe this particular way is one of the best that I've come up with in my 20 years, right? Maybe you feel differently. God bless you. Use whatever you like if that's the case, and you can use some of the concepts I'm talking about and still do quite well if you do that. But I do believe in this one because it's very well thought out and there's a lot that goes into it. You might even notice some delays when I change the chart. It takes some time to process this. There's a lot going on. It's looking at a tremendous amount of data to come up with this scenario where the colors are in or out. Now there's more to it. There's a difference between when the green is on and when it's not, but the basic rule applies. Once it turns green, you would only look for longs until you come into red, and at that point, you would only look for shorts. Again, if you're a professional or a good trader or anything along those lines, you don't have to follow those rules. I always say, learn the rules like a pro so that you can break them like an artist, right? Because an artist, think of a basketball player, Michael Jordan, you might say, hey, don't pull up a fadeaway jumper with 17 seconds on the clock. Well, he's Michael Jordan. He knows when to do that. You know what I mean? Ultimately, those guys can be the artists that they are and do it when they may. So if you're a professional trader that knows what you're doing, or you feel your skill set is solid, feel free to counter, right? And all that would be telling you is really like, look, any trade to the downside during this time is classified as a counter until that comes up, and then you're again with trend, right? So that's the idea. I'm going to get some water. All right, so I'm going to assume, and of course, most people watching this won't know how to use true vibration. You can take my word for it that everything I tell you is already on a documented video, so you don't have to worry about that. All of these signals that you see on top, for the most part, the majority of them are not qualified. And this is one of the most simplified signals that exist within true vibration. They kind of look like this, and these are called pivot shorts. When you see the green, these are pivot longs, right? Now, the majority of these are actually non-qualified. I'm not going to go over the rules, but they relate to market structure. They're very simple, but I will not get into them right now. It's not that they don't apply anymore, they do, but if you are utilizing the directional bias indicator, I'm just going to show you this particular video based on that, okay? Meaning using the DBI. So here we are. Directional bias says I'm only looking for longs. So let's just take the most simplified element. In fact, I can take these off for a second just so it doesn't distract anybody. I gotta go to style, and I will change this for a moment. Now, I'll bring it back later. Here's what I want to show you. Now, under this most simplified version, from the time this guy turned green, here's the daily scale pivot longs. And here's what you're going to notice. Absolute low of the range, absolute low of this range. You do need to set a local low for it to even trigger, just so you have an understanding. So, of course, it's not going to pit the wick of the range, but it comes in the low of the range right here. 3 for 3, by the way, right? All very successful signals, as you would agree. This is a double signal. We'll just count it once. Absolute low of the pullback area. And when I say that, just keep in mind that these are larger zones, right? So sometimes when we look at it like this, we think, oh, it wasn't much of a move. Oh, really? No, that's a hell of a move. That's a substantial move, right? 20% or so. Here's the fifth one. Pullback. Boom. Okay, that works. So that's 5 for 5. This is daily scale. If I go to a lower time frame, I'm going to find much more. On the daily scale, 6 for 6 right here. Pullback. Boom. I go with it because I'm only looking for longs. 7 for 7 right here. Again, I didn't count the double signal, so here's another double signal that I'm not going to count either. I'll just count it once. 8 for 8 in this situation, right? Now, this one was the last working one. This is what I tell people usually with true vibration as well, is that oftentimes even this last signal will work because it's going to take you to a lower high, right? So even in this case, we had this massive candle, so I'm not even suggesting that you would have bought it, but I'm just, for full disclosure, taking them all. And I think you were, what, 8 for 8, 9 for 9 in that range from the time that this thing took green on the daily scale. But not only that, all, and it's not always going to work out that way, but all gave you the pivot low. So for all the people that, oh yeah, this doesn't repaint, just so you have an understanding, right? It doesn't repaint. There's no repainting involved. And by the way, let me just give a caveat. If anyone tries to charge you for this, they're not me. So keep that in mind as well. You do not send me money. I do not ask you to send me money. Anything time that happens, that is a scammer. those scammers block me. I have no control. And very quickly, just for the hell of it, you could see once it goes red on the daily scale, you only got one of those, and it was the absolute best spot to short after the breakdown. Not to mention the fact that once it did go red, which was right there, right, you were red and red trending, and that gave you a $20,000 drop. All right, well, that works. Now, what are you not going to get on the daily scale? Well, of course, you're not going to get the absolute top or the absolute bottom, because that makes no sense. You're on a daily scale, and it's always market structure first always, which means you have to set a lower high, right? So if you have to set a lower high and really technically a lower low, and this will trigger before the lower low a lot of times, but the point is that if you have to do lower high, lower low, then by all means, you're not going to pick the top on that time frame. Does that mean you can't nail the top on a lower time frame? You can, but I would tell people don't worry about that too much, because I would rather you get used to this tool by utilizing the daily bias first, especially most traders that are struggling. If you're a struggling trader, why such a desire to go to the low time frame? You can go to the low time frame, just use the daily as your anchor, meaning your higher time frame guide, and then go to a trigger time frame. If you like the 4 hour, if you like the 2 hour, even if you like that 1 hour, 30 minute, 15 minute, that's up to you. Just keep in mind, the lower you go, you are going to be at risk of divergences of the higher time frames, right? So you might be on M15, you look at something that's probably a qualified short, maybe the setup is great, but in reality, people were working off the 2 hour, the 4 hour, and they needed to set a little divergence there. So that can mess up your chart a little bit. That's just an understanding of the motions of the chart, the vibrations of the chart, the flow, things of that nature. We don't have to go too deep into that right now. I'm just making a point. So don't get discouraged. Trade with the trend when you can. Again, I've already mentioned, if you're a pro, don't be offended. If you're good, don't be offended, of course. Do what you may. And this can help you with that. And we'll touch on that a little bit at the end of this video. I will dive into it just a little bit, okay? But you already seen what I did. I showed daily scale just for giggles. Let's just go into like a 12 hour. And here's the beautiful thing about this directional bias indicator. If you set it at the daily version will stay up here regardless of the time frame you're on. So if I'm on the 12 hour, it's still going to show me the daily scale. If I'm on the 6 hour, it's still going to show me the daily scale, right? And there's a couple things that go on here. I might as well point a few of them out. One of them is the fact that you're in a situation to where when you are staying green like this, now remember, I said once it goes green, I'm only looking for good reasons to long, right? And that's on the trader to find those good reasons, and I'll talk about a few of them right now. But also keep in mind that when it stays green, yes, there is added strength in that, right? So you're going to be likely to be more prone to go ahead and jump on some signals during that time, even lower time frame signals, etc., because you are living in the midst of that green signal, meaning that what happens here is when this turns green, that means everything that I asked the algo to trigger first to give me that directional bias that I should be looking for longs has occurred. When it comes off of it, those elements are not all there. Some of them may still be, and that's reason why it came off the color, because they all have to be clicked on for this to stay green. You don't have to know too much of this. I'm just giving you some perspective, but it's very natural that you don't always have every single scenario in line for you. So what I would say to people is that don't see that as a bad thing. It's a positive thing. But still, in this situation, we're only looking for longs, as I mentioned. So while we're only looking for longs, if we go down to a lower time frame, what you might notice, of course, right off the bat, you will have some that miss, right? That's normal, especially when you go into lower time frames. But although this one is probably a break even, let's make them bigger, by the way, because if you got in here, you did jump up pretty much, but obviously when you lost structure, you fell back, you probably got out. We want to keep our losses to break even, small losses, never large losses, etc. But again, I just want to show them all to you. I'm going to be fair. Another 12-hour pivot long. Yes, that one pays off quite well. Pivot long. Yeah, the weight paid off. Maybe you got out because you didn't like hanging out in it. I get that. I do that sometimes. I get into something, it didn't move like I thought. So maybe you exited that at small gain before the pop. I'm not trying to take credit for things that don't occur. This one, perfect entries here. I mean, these are ideal scenarios. 12 hour, 12 hour, 12 hour. Look at this, right off of the pullback. Pivot long, great entry in the 12 hour. Again, nice entry here as well. This one, I probably would have set a stop 1 ATR below this, so I think it would have held. But again, if it did get stopped out, that happens. But what I'm showing you also is I do want to point out that I'm literally showing you the most basic signal that exists, which is that pivot long, which goes off of another basic indicator that's created within this true vibration. But again, another winner, This one, it might be a winner over the long term, but I'm not, when they wait that long, I'm usually saying, hey, if it doesn't happen within 3 to 8 candles, forget about it. But understand that over time, we're talking about entries that are giving you significant wins on that time frame. The other thing that I'm not pointing out is that we're only looking at that pivot signal and not the trending signal, right? So when you see this thing going green, this is momentum trend, right? So if I'm already long on the daily, getting pivot longs on my 12-hour, and then I'm getting pivot long signals such as this, let me just add one of these boxes. That would give me, forget the fact that the line is red, that's giving me a pivot long from there. That's giving me a pivot long from there. That's giving me a pivot long from there. And again, don't forget that these are big moves, right? So when you zoom in, I'm zoomed out so we could see more data, but these are very, very large moves. I just have this price compressed in a range from 10 to 50,000, so they might look smaller, but it really did significantly perform during that time frame. Again, you can see it. I don't want to have to keep doing this during the video, but ultimately I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression either. So look at this, recycle. This is momentum recycling. Momentum's recycling. Now, you end up popping in, ranges out. You might even got stopped if you took a momentum trade there. That happens. Once it came back again, it paid you back. Same thing over here. By the way, the blue is an early momentum trend, so you can enter those as well. There's a lot of different ways to go about deciding what you're going to put yourself into. Go down to a 4-hour, same type of situation, right? So it doesn't matter where we're at. Let's look. Boom, boom, boom. We'll wait for this popular. Of course, we already know that it's all green because we've kind of reviewed that element of it, but I just want to give people more perspective here to have an understanding that you're going to be put into a position to have the directional bias in your favor, right? Meaning more edge. Does it mean you're going to make money all the time? Of course not. Does that mean you should have not utilized your risk management? Nope, didn't say anything like that. Does it mean that you're going to be a billionaire in a week? Nope, that's only if you get every trade right, which of course isn't going to happen. But it is going to give you tremendous edge, and it's going to help the person that already has some trading chops trade even better. And for those that do struggle, follow the rules specifically, and you're going to notice that, wait a second, things are changing for me. You're going to see the wheels turning a bit. But anyway, back to this. Pivot long, pivot long, pivot long. This is a 4-hour chart, right? You're used to getting chopped up. Pivot long, pivot long. You see where they're happening too? Like more than the majority of them happen right at the base. Pivot long, pivot long. Look at this one. I mean, jeez. I mean, we could do this all day if we needed to, right? Pivot long, pivot long, pivot long. Now look at this one. I like this because things weren't happening. But even in those situations, you notice that you don't often get crushed. It's not that it can't happen, but it's just not so likely that you're going to go pivot long, dump candle, right? That eats you up. But either way, you're going to have stops in place to protect yourself. I'm not going to go too far with this because I can just tell you, if you see these little tiny specks down here, it will continue to show you all of them, boom, 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 boom. And the hit rate is pretty tremendous if we're being open and honest about it. Of course, the lower time frame you go, there's more subjectivity to some chop, etc. So what will come into play there is understanding your support and your resistance. You know, basically I personally love to buy after pullbacks. So especially in those low time frames, you want to wait till you get a nice healthy pullback to something like a support line, and then say, hey, if I'm getting an active pivot candle around that, above that support, great, right? I'm high time frame long. I'm in a good situation. And of course, if it's active, how about that voice? If it's actively green, then you're going to be in a situation to where you feel a little bit more comfortable about it. I've made about 4 videos in about 3/4 of a day, which is 3 more than I made in the last month or two. So my voice is taking a toll already. All right, why switch over here? Because I want to show you something. Once it goes red, and it took some time to go red, that's very natural, but you didn't get caught during that time, right? Even on these 4 hours, you see that there was a pivot long signal right here. Great, it still went up for 4 candles. It made the jump. Where you got out, it's up to you, but you certainly weren't getting crushed on it. And then ultimately it turns red. Okay, well, guess what? You go red. What do I end up getting right here? 4 hour. I wouldn't be looking at anything but shorts at this point, by the way, right? But 4 hour now, trending bear signal. Thank you. Trending bear. Thank you. Trending bear. Thank you, right? That helps you take you down to this tremendous drop. There's more involved there too as well. I don't even have the rest of the signals turned on. But you could see the colored bar right here. That's a pivot short. Pivot short. That's one you would have got stopped out on. That happens. We already showed you that the daily scale gave you a pivot short literally right here at this top. That was a terrible bear signal. I remember when it occurred. and it was ugly. But same thing. Now you're working with the path of least resistance, which was to the downside, and there you go. So be it. Now I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'll try to expedite this by maybe looking at something like a lower time frame. But the thing is, with the directional bias indicator, anything you already do, any chops that you already have, trading chops, etc., it's going to help you with that, right? I'm going to show you that so you can get an understanding of this. I think I posted this example already on Twitter in the form of some pictures. But let's just look. Basic trend lines, right? A lot of people use trend lines. Well, the reality is a lot of people use them incorrectly. A lot of people don't know when they should use them. I said recently on a podcast with someone that I explained, like, look, a lot of times the breaks of trend lines, just a simple trend line, is going to outperform most traders if the conditions are correct, right? And I meant that. And the reality is any type of confluence that can go in the direction of your directional bias, so I'm daily scale directional bias, to the upside. And what happens? We put in a high. Let's just think about this for a second. I'm going to walk. It might take a little bit of a minute here to slow this down, right? Because when things are happening, look, we're coming into some bearish momentum. I know not everyone knows how to use this, but some bearish momentum. And what happens? I have myself a downtrend line. Oh, okay. Look at this. People were actually saying that this was a very troublesome situation. I remember this like it was yesterday. Half of crypto Twitter and all their geniuses, and there's some brilliant guys on there, but 95% of them are full of it. Sorry, there's no other way to look at it. And there was a lot of people that were calling for 7,100. It's not to say that if you called for 7,100 that you're one of the guys that suck. I don't mean that at all, because I'm wrong all the time, so don't take that for granted. But what I'm saying is that I do remember when this was occurring, and I was thinking, oh, this looks like a trap, because I can remember getting some different signals. I remember here when we got this one, I thought that this was a little bit trappy too, but it doesn't matter what I thought. Here's the key to this. We're daily scale green. We have a downtrend line, right? Okay, well, lower high, a little bit of a lower low, it looks like, and then we start to base a little bit. So what happens? A simple break of a trend line. Interesting. And this one didn't retest or anything, but look what happens to the power of a trend line break when it happens in the direction of your directional bias indicator. Good things. And I'm going to show you this over and over again. Now, did we also have pivot longs? Yeah, we had 3 of them. That was very nice of the indicator to give us that in that environment, but it did. They were all good, and they would have been earlier too. But I'm just making a point that this will add to it. Now, anytime we top, whether you want to look at this squeezing formation here, like that, whether you want to look at this guy right there, and you could say this is hindsight stuff. Okay, say what you want, right? But ultimately, you're in a situation to where if you're putting in some element of a lower high and you draw a trend line over and over again, the reason why these are so effective is not because I'm doing some element of hindsight. It's that it all occurred in the midst of a significant bull move. Again, some people mistakenly hear that and they go, yeah, of course, that's hindsight trading. Of course, you're seeing it in hindsight. You can say that now. To which I would again tell you, you are wrong. That is not how it works. That is not the situation, because the directional bias is the one that was telling us to do this, and that is when you would follow it, right? That's when the situation would occur. Now look what happens here at the very end. I want to show you this because this is key. Boom. We come in and put our lower high. So for all those guys that said, oh, wow, you're doing it in hindsight. No, I'm not doing it in hindsight at all, because at this moment I would have drew that line. I'm waiting for the break. Guess what? Never came. Not to mention the fact that it turned red on us anyway, but had it not, we wouldn't have been long again under that environment. See what I mean? So that's very key. But now let's take a look at our little trend lines that we drew. It's very simple stuff. All of a sudden, it has significantly more edge to it. Because of what? It's in the direction of the path of least resistance. It's in that directional bias scenario. Now, I will point out something else to you guys. If you guys are familiar with good old true vibration, you may already know this, right? But you can do far better than even the pivot indicator. You can do better than a lot of things by really getting to learn the tool itself. You'll notice this white line down here, right? When you're in a long, and of course vice versa when you're in the directional bias to the short side, but look what happens here when this guy comes to this level, and I'll wait for a local high when it occurs, but anytime this happens in a bull trend, I want you to pay attention to the exact spot that this is occurring at. You see that? absolute low of that range, absolute low of that range. Now this is a good one because it goes to, yes, the low of the initial range. It does break down a little bit further till we get a nice little reset there, right? So it never came up and cleared again. This is for people that know how to do it, but there's a divergence that gets set. You see the divergence? And you can set divergence. I'm not going to get into that on this video. I'll make another one for that. But ultimately, this is a very beautiful setup. It is a bull divergence under the umbrella of a green directional bias in the midst of what everyone else is thinking is a downtrend, and you end up getting the ultimate low there. So this initial one you might have taken and eventually probably taken a small gain, maybe a break-even type of situation from where you entered. Even if it was a small loss, I don't really care about that, but you could see what ends up happening as long as you were sticking with this. Same thing, remember, once this breaks, what I'm looking for is local high, which doesn't happen until right there. So again, that happened to coincide with the pivot indicator on this one, but you can see again, it's giving you the low of the range. Guess what? One more time, same exact situation, exact low, same situation right there, exact low of that particular range, even though this was the last leg, right? And then after that, we turn red. So same thing happens to the flip side. Look at this, right to that white line that we discussed again, just happens to be the absolute top of the range. I'll be here all week. I'm not out just yet, but I'm just making a point here that you could have an understanding. And then, of course, look, as you go lower, yes, you can make sharper, quicker gains and lower time frames, but learn it with this higher time frame, daily scale bias first and foremost, and then also understand that, hey, I might be countering trend. In fact, let me just go ahead and jump into some of that. Again, I will point out one more time, any technique that you already use that you feel good about, just remember that no matter what your trading is, it's market structure first, always. Market structure first, always. Market structure first, always. That's always a key, okay? So don't forget that. Market structure first, always. So, sorry, I had a little text there that I had sent. So, that's always going to be a key, as always. You have that situation that you're going to be looking at market structure first. But if you have some other skill set that you like, a way that you trade, anything along those lines, continue to use it. Just use it in confluence with that, and you'll say, oh, wow, look at this. I want you to review it. Review your own techniques along with this, and then what you'll see is I'm very confident you're going to come back and say, absolutely, it does help me strengthen my edge even with my own techniques. So it can be helpful for the pro in reference to that, and certainly helpful to the amateur. Now, of course, if you're an amateur, be careful, right? Because you might be playing in some waters that you're not too familiar with, and it's easy to make more mistakes. So follow the rules of the system and things of that nature. Of course, not financial advice or anything along those lines. This is a tool for your own benefit that you can choose to use or choose not to. But let's go to lower time frame, because I do want to wrap this up a little bit. I don't mind showing you a couple different things, though, before I do that. Let's look at something like dominance, right? Why is it so important to look at something like dominance? Okay, well, same tool. I'm choking, so I might choke my way through the rest of this video. Just try to swallow that one down. But anyway, here we go. Dominance says what? We are daily scale green. Great, that's good. Dominance is rising. Then suddenly we go daily scale red. Interesting. And then we get what? A completely overbought situation here for those that know how to use it. Again, there's videos on this. If you don't believe me, you can go ahead and look at that video and you'll get a better understanding. Also, since we're looking at the short side, I might as well just bring back the pivots so that you can see that I'm not lying to you when I bring this up here. One's a warning, one's an actual signal. And look at this. From this point on, you're now daily scale, directional bias to the downside, daily scale bear pivot, daily scale highly oversold, daily scale significant hidden bear divergence, right? See how we went higher, came lower. This is ugly. And look what it ends up giving us. Daily scale trend signal. And if anyone doesn't know yet what this means, I sent out a tweet about this when it happened, which was alt season, right? And that was the tweet, which is alt season. And you damn sure better believe it was alt season, and alts went apeshit at that point. And you even got another signal right there after it popped. Thank you for that. Another 10 days worth of alts doing pretty well. So you would have been just happy with that as well. And then eventually, there might have been a little mission mash here. I don't want to act as anything's ever perfect, so maybe some of this caught you, and as the changeover was starting to occur, that happens. But the point is that it can help you in that regard as well. And now I'll just expedite quickly. I'm going to go to some lower time frames, even though, you know what I just thought of? Let me just do this. For those that trade stocks, right? Let's just look real quick. Didn't prep this at all, but how about volatility, the VIX? I'm not going to explain to you how you would use this. This is just for people that actually already do look at things like the VIX, but don't kid yourself. It's going to help there as well, right? I mean, you're going to have a situation where, yeah, you're lower volatility and then suddenly you get green. Well, what's happening? Well, you start to pay attention at that point, and then what do? You get yourself a pivot long under a green flag, and guess what? Volatility jumps up dramatically, right? This is a 3.5x in volatility, in case anyone's looking. You may not trade traditional stocks, so that might not mean anything to you, but for those that do, you understand that, yeah, that's pretty powerful to understand. Guess what happens when red comes back? Lower volatility for a long time. We're just hanging out, relax, relax, relax. And that's kind of the benefit and the idea behind that, okay? Let me switch gears here to lower time frames. I have something here. Where are we going to go? Let's go back to Bitcoin for a minute. Okay. I know this looks crazy because I literally brought it up super quick. I just want someone to kind of have an understanding. Now, do not jump into the lower time frames because you can set this. Remember, this is the daily up here. At the moment, I actually have this as the 4-hour directional bias. So this might lose people for sure, but right now I have daily, 4-hour, 1 hour, 15-minute. I'm not advising anyone to do that. In fact, if you were going through this, I'd say you probably just have the 15-minute in the daily, the hour in the daily, something like that. I'd rather you actually spend the time to understand that it makes more sense for you to come up with your own system above anything else, and also understand the daily scale in great detail before venturing into these lower time frames. But I know what's going to happen. Some people love to trade on these lower time frames. And you might ask, well, can I do it? Well, everyone that uses true vibration, or at least the ones that use it well, actually already know that, yeah, you of course can use this on a lower time frame, and you can counter, right? So, I mean, something like this absolutely is a qualified signal. It is a qualified signal all by itself, but there's something you can do. On the higher time frame, we already know that I'm countering. Look at this, red on the daily, red on the 4-hour. This is all bad. This was red on the 1 hour, meaning that this is ideal situations to look for shorts on those time frames and below, which means anything we do is a counter. But look what ends up happening. Bitcoin falls into this region, and then we start to see our normal rectangle type formation. I'm not going to teach TA on this particular video or anything along those lines, but what do you see start happening? From this point here, you get a little bit of a swing failure, and yeah, you absolutely see some elements of a rising bottom, right? That's very normal. You obviously know you have a top. This is a build-up formation, right? That is a natural look of a build-up on support. We came here to support. It began to hold. We started to see structure. You always want to see some rising bottoms come into play. But here's what's most important. How could you effectively use this with this system? This is the 15-minute. If you don't believe me, I will show you just in case. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to click on this and show you the inputs. 15-minute DBI, Directional Bias Indicator. Click that off. As of this moment, it might as well go to green so I don't fool anybody. Boom. Right then and there, about 30 minutes before this guy broke out, the Directional Bias Indicator tells me what? That on the 15-minute and below, the greater edge is to look for longs until market structure changes. Now, does that mean that market structure couldn't have changed and that this could flip immediately? Of course it could, because don't forget, we're literally countering the higher time frame. You must be aware of that, because if you fool around and hang out there, you know what's going to happen to you, right? You're going to find yourself in this situation. You go, oh, look, yeah, cool, things are hanging out. And next thing you know, you're going to get a red candle like that because this guy's going to roll over and turn red and screw you. Be wise. Be careful, okay? But here we are. 15-minute directional bias indicator goes green. Thank you. Now, choose whatever time frame you want or what's comfortable for you. Or if you're, by the way, it's a skill set to find the appropriate time frame. So you already know how to do that. You're ahead of the game as well. But let's look at how the vibration works, right? This tells me all systems go on 15-minute if structure stays the same. Well, look, first of all, structure did stay the same, but more importantly, on the 15-minute, I was also momentum trending green. Now, I'm, again, taking the liberties of assuming you know how true vibration works. There's videos on it so you can learn it, but the idea is, there you go. Green, green, that's your long there. You're roughly 29,872 in that range. Had a little 15-minute basic candle, one that tries to level up, and then boom, we try to take off. Well, that works, right? So you're in the situation where suddenly price is moving up, a little bit of a squeeze on some people. Now look what happens. Price resets. Awesome. That works. Things happen. Do we get any other signals here? Nope. Didn't even quite make it down to that level just yet. But we can see that we end up getting another trend signal right there. Or if you waited for the green, so be it too. So that would have given you a second entry, whether you like the early signal or the pure momentum trending. Guess what? Another great signal. Eventually, what happens here is this is the 1 hour. The 1 hour is going to green. Now, again, we're fighting the 4 hour, the daily, everything above because everything's been garbage, right? So again, there's a lot of work to be done at the time of me making this particular video. And that should give you a quicker trigger usually to kind of take some profits, right? So what might I be looking for in those situations? Well, how about a divergence, right? So this is a powerful indicator. But if I suddenly see a divergence like that, and I probably wouldn't have realized the divergence until after this candle closed, but this is also a failure pattern, right? So I leveled up, and then the next candle failed back into my range. So right here, I'm out, 32,183. You're talking about a very low time frame counter that easily, crystal clear, if you happen to be paying attention, got you in right there, and that's 29,872, and got you out right there, 32,183. Good job, right? On the low time frame, you're countering. And then, of course, you have to be patient and wait. Maybe you're waiting for this. Maybe you want to go for it again, right? You said, hey, my last signal was green. I never turned over to red. I have a reset here on my FSR. That's fine. And I'm getting a pivot long. You could try it out, right? You'd say, hey, let's go 1 ATR below this level right there and see what happens. And that's ultimately how you would go about it. But the point is that, yes, you can utilize it for such an event. If you wanted to go down that road, it is something that you can do. Again, I'm going to wrap this guy up in a second. Let's see if I can think. Oh, yeah, I had dash up here for a reason. So let's look at something that moved recently, like a dash, kind of same example, just to understand, like, look, yeah, this huge explosion, just this monstrous explosion. I'm not suggesting you should have caught that or traded that or anything along those lines. But how would you have traded? Well, you would also understand that you're still in this situation where you're countering the high time frame. So again, you're living on the low time frame, and you're recognizing the fact that I need to be careful, right? I need things to happen quick. I need to make sure my market structure doesn't change when I have a good signal. And in all honesty, what happens is after that happens, you go into immediate, bear momentum. So you certainly weren't looking for longs anywhere in here. Even the fact that you got this on the lower time frame didn't matter. You were in bear momentum. And then eventually you do go back to the 15-minute saying, yeah, you can look for longs again. Okay, that's the 15-minute right here. You're aware that you're countering. This doesn't change till way over here. So it's not till that point right there that you said, thank you for the long. I gave you that long in this case at 122. Remember, market structure first, always. So what am I doing right then and there? I am saying I need 1 ATR below my pivot here, whatever that is. You said it, whatever you want, of course. Now, by the way, you can do more distance. Maybe you really felt that there was a trend change coming. You make your position smaller and drop your stop to here or even way down here, which seems distant, but maybe it's a smaller position for that. As long as you shrink your position size, you can take a distant stop. That's fine. But again, I'll let you guys trade the way you trade. But the idea here is that the way I would have looked at that is, hey, that's pretty tight. If I was living on that time frame, and it doesn't matter what time frame you looked at, it would be the same type of element. You just may have a trade or you may not. That's how it would work. But then ultimately, that pivot happened to be perfect. It leads into an additional buy signal of the trending signal right there, if you chose to take it. Again, you always want your FSR to hang up in there if it really is trending, especially on these low time frames. And it did. Held, beautiful, good job, nice, etc. And this one really went on for quite some time. It did a great job. I mean, it did a hell of a job here. You did get a tight divergence here. That would have given you an out right here if you wanted to get out. So be it. If not, maybe you stayed in. It did hold range pretty well. This is a classic situation here. I mean, ultimately, when something like this happens, you certainly want to see this hold at that point because this is where you're going to set up your hidden divergences. And sure enough, it does, right? You see hidden divergence right there. So this is, again, a level that is going to create a pivot, which it does. It gives you one last chop up. And then recently, this has been breaking down. But ultimately, just giving you another instance of how you can use the lower time frame element. You're going to have to study that. You're going to have to put some work into that. And if you're not willing to put a little blood, sweat, and tears into learning it, then you don't really want to make that money. But it is there for you if you follow rules and you become rule-based in your approach. And the whole idea of the rule-based approach is not to be like a computer. It's to protect your money. That's the idea. So be consistent in what you're doing, and that leads to you protecting your money with your proper risk management and understanding that, hey, I'm not going to give myself some extra room because I'm following X rule or Y rule, etc., and going about it in that way. Other than that, I think this video actually did go a little bit longer than I already planned. I could show you some other different things, but probably not a reason. I'll just put out another video sometime this week on this because I know people are interested in seeing some more examples. That's it for now. I hope all is well. We'll talk to you soon. Mr. Anderson signing out. If you want to contact me for True Vibration, you can. Just DM me on Twitter. The backload is pretty significant. Also, I'm not answering those. I have someone that answers it. Yeah, some people in the responses, there's some delays or anything along those lines. I'll be honest with you, because of the way Twitter works, and that can easily delay things further. You might not know what I'm talking about, but ultimately, if someone does contact you, try to talk back to them pretty quickly if you are actually interested in getting this. And again, no one's going to charge you for it. If someone asks you to pay them money, it isn't me. There's a lot of scammers out here. They block me. I can't see them. I can't report them or anything along those lines because I don't know who they are. So just be very careful of that, because surely I'm sure someone will contact you and say, hey, pay me some money for this, and that's just some ridiculous nonsense. But again, DM me on Twitter, be patient, and ultimately happy to assist if we can. Talk to you soon. Mr. Anderson signing out.